Statesboro City Council meeting for January 21st, 2015. Our invocation and pledge of allegiance was to be led by Councilman Phil Boyd, who is not here, so I don't get a chance to do this very often. It's always done by a councilman, so I'm going to go ahead and do our invocation and lead us in our pledge. Everyone bow their heads, please. Heavenly Father, thank you for allowing us all to gather here today. We bring different opinions, we bring different wants, we bring different needs, but we do meet as a community, and we freely do so. And we are all so very, very grateful for that. Protect us here tonight, protect us as we leave, protect our families, and help us all to make good, right, and just decisions. We do all of these things in your name, O Lord. Amen. Pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A couple of things before we get started. I know y'all noticed that the windows are up, and that's because we just like it that way. No, it's not because we like it that way. And I apologize. There are a lot of people here tonight, and a lot of I know that the city manager, Robert Cheshire, said they checked the air conditioning unit in anticipation of a lot of people here this evening, and it was working just fine. At what time, Robert?
About 3. Stop. They are working on it.
So they're working on that, and that's why you have your windows open. So hopefully that will be corrected. We put the windows down and enjoy the fresh air. Enjoy the air conditioning. But until that time, we're just going to have to enjoy the fresh air. Some other things to mention before we get into, we've got a number of public hearings tonight. We had, in the planning and zoning meeting past Wednesday, a week ago, there seemed to be issues with the microphones, and I know that there's been a lot of care taken tonight to make sure that the microphones are as high as they possibly can be without producing any feedback. We've got a sign up there on the lectern that says, please, if you're speaking into the microphone, please do so clearly, and make sure that your voice or your face is near the microphone so that everybody can hear. Everybody's opinion is important, and so we want to make sure that you are heard by council and by the audience alike. So I'll be giving instructions about that a little bit later. Don't be insulted if we say speak up. It's literally because everybody wants you to be heard. So I'm going to ask Ms. Sue with agenda item 3, public comments. Do we have any, Ms. Sue? All right, then we're going to move forward with agenda item 4, which is consideration of a motion to approve the consent agenda. I'll ask council to review that for me and someone to give a motion to do so.
I make a motion to approve consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do I have any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 5, a public hearing and consideration of a motion to adopt resolution 2015-05, which is the resolution adopting the 2014 update to the City of Statesboro Comprehensive Master Plan Agenda, and to approve the submittal of such. Do I have a motion to open this public hearing?
Motion to open public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is open. I'm going to turn this over to Mandy Cody to take us from here, please.
Thank you, Mayor. This is our 5-year update to the 2009 Comprehensive Plan. We have updated this pursuant to the new rules issued by the Department of Community Affairs. The plan has been approved as qualifying for minimal standards by the Coastal Regional Commission. It has been on our website for about 6 months now for public comment. It has received a recommendation of approval by our Planning Commission and has also taken review by both staff and council. We've had 2 public hearings on this previously. We have made some adjustments based on those comments to the future land use map, which are on your screen and in your packet this evening. The 3 significant changes to the plan are the addition of 3 character areas, one being a residential redevelopment area, an urban neighborhood area, and also a neighborhood center area. All of those changes, as we discussed earlier, are in red in your plan. With that, I would just remind you that this plan serves as our overall set of goals and objectives, as well as policies for land use decisions moving us forward over the next 5-year period. I'll be happy to take any questions that you all may have.
Mandy, I'm looking at my map. I'm looking at my map inside my master plan, and then I'm comparing it against the one, you know, that that most of us have gone over this week. And I'm not seeing the changes that you and I looked over. And I'm just talking about the 67 corridor.
The dark blue, Councilman,
Mm-hmm.
if I remember what you're asking me correctly, you're asking me about Highway 67 across from the Edgewood.
All the way out to the Lutheran Church.
Yes, we made many changes. That dark blue is a residential redevelopment area, which is really intended to be traditional neighborhood areas that may be suffering from.
But I guess what I'm asking is, that's the map that should be in here, not this.
I think you have two maps in your.
Is this the map you're referring to, Mandy?
No, ma'am. I apologize. Thank you. I did not understand your question,
Now,
Councilman.
I apologize.
The map that the mayor is showing me there is
No,
the.
apologize.
That map that the mayor is holding up is the map that was adopted in the 2009 plan. The map that is on your screen is the revised map for,
Which is one page over.
which is one page over and is being considered for adoption tonight in the update.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, it is a little confusing.
Yes, ma'am.
It is a- Do I have anybody here this evening that is here to speak for the change in the comprehensive plan? As this is a public hearing. Do I have anybody here that's here to speak against the change in the comprehensive plan? Please come forward.
Thank you.
State your name and who you're with.
Yes, Stephen T. Rushing, attorney here in Statesboro with Colby Rushing, Snipes, Marsh, and Hodgen. Actually, it's a very comprehensive plan. It's a lot of hours obviously went into it. And my objection is limited just to the property of my client on whose behalf I'm here today, and that's the Martha Benson estate. And our only objection is to the extent that this latest addition, the residential redevelopment area, would include their property. That would be the only objection to the new comprehensive map. We were not aware of that till recently, and therefore would express our objection to being included in that new area. Thank you.
Do I have anybody else that would like, I'm speaking to the microphone myself. Do I have anybody else that would like to come up and speak for or against the change in the comprehensive plan that's being suggested?
I'm still on item 5.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to make sure.
I promise you, you'll know when we're on item 6. Yeah, that's right. That's right. I promise. Clear. Do I have any comments from council before I ask for a motion to approve this? Any questions by council?
I'd like to say thank you to Mandy. Everybody at the city who's spent a lot of time on this. It's a fantastic piece of work. Appreciate you listening to our suggestions and comments and putting them in there. Just want to say thank you for all the time and effort.
Thank you for the team effort. Appreciate that.
Mandy, maybe if you could just give a quick 60-second, 90-second, why it's revised and why we're voting on it?
It's being revised pursuant to the rules of the Department of Community Affairs. It's been 5 years since the plan was adopted, and it requires an update at this time. They also issued new rules and regulations effective 2013, 2014 for updates, so that required the review. The major changes are the 3 new character areas: the residential redevelopment area, the urban neighborhood area, and also a neighborhood center area. Those are reflected on your map, the one that's on the screen, the new map, and in also the text of the plan to give us some guidance in those particular jurisdictions.
Any further questions or comment by council? All right, this time I'd like to ask council for a motion excuse me, I'd like for a motion to close the public hearing regarding the adoption of resolution 2015. Do I have a motion from council to close that public hearing?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Now do I have a consideration of a motion to adopt resolution 2015-05 by council?
I make a motion to approve resolution 2015-05.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion from council? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Resolution 2015-05 is carried. Agenda item 6, which is a public hearing and consideration of a motion to approve application number RZ 14-10-01. Before we open up that public hearing, I told Mr. Rushing that I'd give him some time to go ahead and set up what he needed to set up before we get started. So. All right. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing to approve application RZ 14-10-01?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, state by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, I'd like to declare the public hearing open. Prior to getting started, I would like to make a few remarks and set some ground rules. Obviously, there are a lot of people here that are interested in this particular topic, and so there are many people that will probably wish to speak. Spoke with Mr. Rushing. I haven't spoken with Mr. Michael, but I asked that they limit, Mr. Rushing limit his presentation to 20 minutes. And Mr. Michael obviously will have the same ability and rebuttal. I would like to ask that members of the public that are not represented, that are not the attorneys in this situation, limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes. We've got a lot of folks here that would like to be heard. So I'm going to start by asking Mr. Rushing.
Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. Thank you for this opportunity. As I stated previously, I'm Steve Rushing, attorney with Talby, Rushing, Snipes, Marsh, and Hodgen. I'm representing the applicant, the Martha Benson estate. It is represented by Dr. Bobby Benson, who's the executor of his mother's estate. He's here on the front row today, along with his realtor, Ralph Kitchens, and Mr. Doug Carroll is also here with Enmark Stations, Inc. As everyone knows here, this was the Benson's family home they acquired back in the 40s. So they've had that property some 70 years in the family. In fact, initially it was a family farm where they raised cows. They had cows across Georgia Avenue in a pasture. In fact, when Mr. Benson went off to the war, he asked Miss Martha if ever the pasture across Fair Road came available, he'd like to obtain it for the cows, and she did. And that later became Woodlawn. So that was a long time ago. And that's just a bit of brief history for it, and we understand that's not what you base your decisions on. Dr. Benson, he's got a task as executor to carry out this estate in the most effective manner. He's a fiduciary, and so that's what he's been attempting to do. He initially contacted the Georgia Southern University, explored different avenues of possibly them acquiring this property, and they were unable to come to terms. And so he opened up the property to the public market and got plenty of attention then. And Enmark was one of those. They made a good proposal, and they've entered into a contract that, of course, is contingent on rezoning. That's why we're here today. We know you've got to make this decision for a rezone based on those standards in the the ordinance, and I'd like to try to address those, each one, over my 20 minutes. First of all, the existing uses and zoning of property nearby. I took the liberty of bringing this property zoning map, and for you, I know it's difficult, but right here is our property. It's R3, and you can see by colors kind of what the zoning is around. Just to the north is an exempt area. That's the gardens, and then on the other side of the gardens you see the only other R3 area, which is a small area on Mycan Drive. And then, of course, the big white one is the exempt zone of the university. We've got the biggest light blue area is, of course, the R4 zone, high-density residential. To the south beyond that is, of course, the zone office. That's the only office zone in the area. That is the hospital, but the hospital is also a permitted use in commercial zones. In fact, the commercial zone, there's only two permitted, anything in a CBD district or hospitals. And of course, across Fair Road in the large brown area is, of course, Woodlawn and these other subdivisions. That's the R20 zone. So really, you've got quite an assortment of zones in the nearby area, and again, the standard does say nearby, not just adjacent. And so looking a little further north, you see some sprinkling of commercial already in this area, right at Georgia Avenue and Chandler Road. Coming down Georgia Avenue, there's another spot of commercial zone. That was the old Wise Theater when I was a kid, but that's the dialysis center. And of course, the next largest commercial zone is just on the other side of the hospital. It's important to note here that 67 does separate the largest R20 zone, and our property is really across the road, and with the spotting of commercial zones already in the nearby area, we feel it's not unreasonable to consider this property for a commercial zone. That's the main importance of Highway 67. It is basically has served as a dividing line both in the 2009 comprehensive plan. It divides several districts in the latest plan that just was adopted. And we realize that there is virtually no commercial across Highway 67, but we distinguish ourselves being separated by that road. And of course, there's also an area that separates our property from the R20 zone directly across from Highway 67, and it's a small tract that's actually owned by the city of Statesboro. And that was donated by the Benson family some years ago. That was to be a buffer, in fact, but obviously it has been reduced in size with the broadening of Highway 67 over the years. The second standard, the extent to which the property values are diminished by the particular zoning restriction. And as for this particular property, which is what this standard refers to, there was virtually no interest in the property as a home, even with the university's interest. It was not for residential use. And certainly when we opened the property up to the general market, all of the interest was as commercial, and it's primarily due to all the multiple road accesses. It's got roads all the way around it. It's got high visibility, and when you apply a commercial use to it, then the value increases exponentially. This was very evident in the discussions with Georgia Southern, which they just looked at valuing the property clearly as a residential property, and then when we compared that to the value that could be obtained on the commercial market, it was just very much diminished. So clearly, the zoning is diminishing the value of our property. The third standard, the extent to which the description of property values of the property owner promotes the health, safety, morals, or general welfare of the public. That's a difficult one to interpret, but I interpret it to say how does the current zone affect those standards versus the proposed zone, health, safety, morals, and general welfare. Well, clearly, if this property was allowed to be rezoned, it definitely will have an impact on those matters, as would any change of use, whether it be for the duplexes, the only other use that's permitted in the R3 zone. But what is important is whether that changes and the effects of those things can be developed and monitored, and that's what we've got staff assistance there for. The developer themselves would take great effort to address all of those standards, the health, safety, welfare. Certainly if it doesn't make the property safe, it's going to be difficult to get patrons to their property. They would use softer lighting directed downwards. That would address safety concerns and prevent infiltration of light to other properties around. Now, we may not can duplicate the exact trees and shrubs that are growing on the property there now, but through intelligent use of landscaping, we can address the health, safety, and at the same time the aesthetics of the property. We'd certainly look to the city staff to assist with that as well. And in fact, in their report, they had 8 or 9 suggestions towards protecting nearby properties and mitigating this effect. And they reference, of course, also using landscaping from the recommendations of the Safe by Design program of the Statesboro Police Department. They reference the Statesboro Tree Ordinance, also the use of screening and buffers in accordance with the standards of the city's Public Works Department. All of these things are there to address certainly these standards. So, in addition to the roads that basically are separating this property from all the adjacent properties, the strip of land we've already mentioned. There's also some nice wooded area on the edge of the church's property. These standards would also be addressed by all of these ordinances when working with the city staff. The fourth standard, the relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the property. To retain the R3 zone, that is going to limit or restrict the Bensons as to what they can do with the property. Number one, they continue to use it for single family use. 2, they can convert it to the only other use permitted, and that's duplexes, which depending upon the configuration, maybe 10 or 12 buildings on the site, or back to a conveyance with Georgia Southern that has been tried already. Any of these alternatives, however, pale to those options that would be available in a commercial zone. So it's easy to see what the hardships are. It's the less opportunities for sale, the significantly lesser value. What are the gains to the public? That involves some speculation, but obviously those entering and exiting the subdivision across the street certainly may prefer to see the old home and the trees and shrubs that are growing on it now. Certainly they would prefer that, I think, over 10 or 12 duplexes that might also could be placed on the property. There's also a perceived amount of traffic increase that might be considered. Of course, if it's developed for duplexes, that may or may not be the case. It may have just as much traffic if it was to have additional duplexes there rather than the commercial property. But in any event, the property is certainly not going to continue to be used in the same use as it has in the past. So we would assert that the limitations being placed on the property, if it remains zoned R3, outweighs those perceived gains, particularly when the Benson family receives no compensation for those gains. As for the fifth standard, the suitability of the subject property for the zone purposes, R3, the current zone, again permits the single-family dwellings on 8,000 square foot lots or duplexes on 12,000 square foot lots. If you look on the west side of 67 from Tillman all the way up to the bypass, it would appear that this may be the last remaining single-family dwelling on that side of the road that actually accesses Fair Road. Of course, it's been there since the 40s. Now, there is a road on all sides of this property. That makes it less suitable for single-family dwelling. But for commercial use, that is considered favorable. You've got roads, different accesses, more visibility, in particular when one of those roads is a state route. It makes it very attractive to commercial users. Each of those automobiles traveling on 67 is a potential customer. City and water services are also available to the property. That makes this property no longer suited for single-family use, but clearly for commercial use. The sixth standard, the length of time that the property has remained zoned is vacant, considered in the context of land development in the area. Well, again, this was the family home up until 2009. When Miss Martha died, since then we have explored all the various alternatives, and only when Dr. Benson turned to the potential commercial use did we get all of this additional attention. And of course, the Inmark proposal was deemed the most suitable for the property. And if you look historically, in the last few years at least, almost all of the development in the general area has been commercial, primarily out around the hospital. And there have been very few new single-family dwellings houses built in the area of our property. The seventh standard, the extent that the proposed change would impact the following. Now, this is a mouthful. Population density, community facilities, living conditions, traffic patterns and congestion, environmental aspects, existing and future land use patterns, and property values in adjacent areas. Thankfully, the planning staff has done a good job addressing this standard, but it is of particular note that their report states that community facilities or services would not be impacted, nor would there be an environmental impact. And if the rezone was permitted, there would be very little population density impact in that the commercial use versus the residential use. So as for the other items, the traffic patterns and congestions, well, one thing we point out here is that the proposed use is not a destination type property, not like the hospital or the Mill Creek Park. Those are type destinations. What our proposed use, they are seeking to take advantage of the traffic that is already there heading to a destination. They want to, of course, pull them off the road, get them some fuel and a healthy snack, and put them back on the road. They're not going to add a lot of additional traffic, but more take advantage of that exists. Now, the Inmark has really designed a new design for their store for this property. But even so, even with that new design, it's not anticipated that someone would drive across town just to come to this store and then drive back. That's what I mean by it not being a destination. The proposed hotel on the property is something more of a destination, but again, it only seeks to attract those patrons who are going to be in the general area, either for Georgia Southern or visiting a relative. But even that, they can only attract up to their capacity for one night, which is going to be 90 to 100 rooms. You're looking at those people who are still not arriving and leaving all at the same time. And when you compare that to the traffic count already that's on Highway 67, it's just an insignificant amount that can easily be handled by that 5-lane road. And on top of that, again, the city staff and the Department of Transportation would continue to look at those traffic patterns. There's already proposed a decel lane coming on off of 67. There's also proposed correcting the bend in Georgia Avenue. Again, the property is unique, having roads on both sides. It can be a double access. As for the impact on property values in adjacent areas, there's a lot of speculation under this standard, but there are some facts through the tax assessor's office website. As for surrounding properties, that's one involves some speculation. Some folks here, of course, speculate they're going to be affected negatively by this. Some may think it would be affected very little, but I would, again, direct your attention to our map. A similar area to the one we have is, of course, up here in the Bel Air subdivision, just northeast of us. Notice the similarity. Again, here's the R20 area here in Bel Air. Here's another 5-lane road, and across that road, of course, is the commercial zoned area that's already exists. Now, there in fact is a commercial strip on the same side of the road as Bel Air, but it's not currently being used that way. But if you look at the tax assessor's office at the values that's been in that property over the years, those properties' values have remained stable. Even as this property across the road has continued to develop commercially, those values have remained stable, have really not been affected either positively or negatively by that development. And in fact, among the commercial uses across the 5-lane road, there already exists a fuel station and convenience store across from Bel Air. The eighth and the last standard, consistency with other governmental land use, transportation, and development plans for the community. Here we review the future development map and corresponding plan of the city of Statesboro. Now at the Planning Commission meeting, of course, we had a different map. We were looking at the 2009 map when we made our presentation. And now I believe since we've now adopted the amendment to that map, we'd be looking at what's called the 2014 map. However, both of those maps do use Highway 67 as a dividing line between different districts. The area east of 67 from Zetterauer to Gentilly was designated established on the 2009 map, but is designated as the new residential redevelopment area on the new 2014 map that we just adopted. And on that same east side from Gentilly Road to near the bypass, the area was designated as developing on the 2009 map, but is designated as established residential neighborhood on the 2014 map. Then on the west side of 67 from Zetterauer all the way to the hospital was designated University District on the 2009 map, but now on the 2015 map, just adopted, is designated residential redevelopment. But that would include the Benson property, as well as the First Presbyterian Church property, the Southern Down apartments, and the Bermuda Run apartments. The area around the hospital, including the Market District, is labeled Activity Center on both of those 2009 and the 2015 map. However, under the 2009 comprehensive plan and the 2014 update to that plan, there is discussed in the narrative the desire for infill and redevelopment of areas no longer suitable for former uses. Also, there's the desires expressed, I think that's pages 108 and 9, that for more mixed uses within districts using scale and design techniques which incorporate trees, vegetation, and innovative planning concepts. Here, Inmark has certainly utilized such innovative planning with its latest design proposed for this site. And if I may, this is one of the renderings of what Inmark has proposed.
Steve, you want to hold that back?
Yes. All right. I guess this is something of an aerial view of what is proposed. This would be the Inmark station here, and here, kind of turned to its side, would be the proposed hotel. Notice, using these innovative designs, they've used a lot of the landscaping. They've used the double road accesses, also with shrubs and trees and landscaping for that, trying to make it more compatible. Here is a view that would be proposed in front of the new station. Notice part of their new design is these muted colors. They're more of a greenery type colors that they are using. That would be from 67 looking towards the new station as proposed. This one is further toward the hospital, looking kind of from the corner back toward the station. Up this way would be toward downtown. And then I think this is the last one I have. This here would be the proposed hotel, and kind of a little tree and shrub area in between, and then over to the left would be the proposed convenience store. Now, the comprehensive plan also states at various places, including at page 109, that it shall be sought to maximize use of the existing infrastructure, all of which already exists to this site. It is also well stated in the plan narrative at page 9, and I quote, "Commercial, retail, and office uses can coexist compatibly in residential areas if the design of the establishment is properly considered." Now, right now, there already exist these commercial retail zones within the area that was designated as the University District. Currently, the largest area within that district is exempt from zoning, but also there is some office in these zoning areas that we ask you to take note of. It just seems unlikely that the last remaining house facing directly on the west side of 67 from Tillman out to the bypass would continue to be used that way. 60 years ago, this was the family farm. It no longer was really viable as a farm as town came out to the country, and now, 60 years later, it is no longer viable for a single family residence. We took notice of another addition to the comprehensive plan today at page 108 that said the city will respect private property rights and the Constitution of the United States and the state of Georgia, and therefore we have submitted in writing our constitutional challenges. We're asking this council to allow the city staff and the departments to assist the developer in making this a compatible addition to the city and to the neighborhood using all the tools and the ordinances that would apply. So on behalf of Dr. Benson and his family, we respectfully request that you grant this application for rezone from R3 to CR, and we thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Steve. Before we go any further, I was going to ask Mandy if you will talk about the presentation in front of the Planning and Zoning Committee and what was the vote there.
Yes, ma'am.
Give us an update on that from this past Wednesday.
Yes, ma'am, we had a very lengthy presentation in front of planning and zoning. We did present the staff report, and I believe there were 15 speakers at that meeting that addressed the council. If memory serves, Mr. Rushing and as representing the applicant and the applicant's team were the only speakers in favor of the application. The other speakers seemed to be from the nearby neighborhoods and voiced their opposition to the rezone. We had a full planning commission in attendance, all 7 members that evening, and the recommendation from that body was to deny both the rezone application and the height variance that is a companion request in this application.
And did you say, did I miss what the final decision was?
Their recommendation was to deny the request, 7-0 to deny the request.
Alan, based on what Mr. Rushing said about asserting their constitutional rights, at this time will we continue with the hearing? Okay. Okay, thank you. Do I have anybody else? We're going to start with somebody that would speak for the project. Do I have anybody in the audience that would like to speak for? Okay, can I have somebody that would like to speak against? Bob, go ahead, Bob, we'll let the attorney speak then.
Madam Mayor, Council, Mr. Manager, my name is Bob Michael. I've been hired by the neighbors of the Woodlawn Neighborhood Association, and to oppose this, I'm also a member and parishioner at Pittman Park United Methodist Church, which is also in the vicinity of this proposed development. I want to address a couple things that Mr. Rushing said. I think it may have been an accident, referred to R3 as single family, but that is, as you know, it's technically referred to as medium density multifamily residential. I think he mentioned it supporting up to 10 duplexes, so I think that is a valid use, especially considering its proximity to Georgia Southern University. With respect to his, the applicant's asserted constitutional challenge, the courts will look at the 8 factors, but the linchpin, what it really comes down to, and I think this came up in the Parker's case, is courts will only strike down a zoning ordinance if the zoning ordinance as currently zoned results in relatively little gain or benefit to the public while inflicting serious injury or loss on the owner. Additionally, it is well established that a significant detriment to the landowner is not shown by the fact the property would be more valuable if rezoned, or by the fact that it would be more difficult to develop the property as zoned. Commercial property typically does have a higher value than residential, but there's still valid public reasons and constitutional reasons that councils are given the authority to protect residential areas, one of which is the integrity of residential neighborhoods such as Woodlawn and the neighborhoods in the vicinity of that from this commercial creep that is coming from all directions, really, and to give residents a sense of some stability when it comes to what is most likely their largest investment. As I mentioned at the Planning and Zoning Commission, there is a Supreme Court case, Howell v. Mayor and Alderman of Savannah, in which there was somewhat similar challenge to a zoning ordinance in Savannah, which required residential structures to be put, only residential structures could be erected next to Forsyth Park in Savannah. And someone wanted to put a filling station in one of those residentially zoned areas. And I think the court eloquently denied that, and the Supreme Court upheld that by stating that business structures on the street which form the boundaries of this lovely park would tend to destroy its loveliness and beauty, and do not the beauty of parks conduce to the general welfare of the city. Well, as I'm sure you're going to hear from some of the residents and some of the citizens of Statesboro and Bullitt County, the Garden of the Coastal Plain is right next door, and it's one of our few public green spaces in the city. And it has an estimated 20,000 visitors a year, 3,000 school children, and it really is a crown jewel of this community. And in addition to concerns of traffic patterns, noise, light pollution, protecting residential areas from commercial creep, you can also consider the value, the public benefit that having the botanical gardens, having such an educational tool and green space, you can consider that as a valid factor in your analysis. I'll also address, and I've provided the clerk of the city a copy of this, but if Madam Mayor permits, I'll hand each council member a packet. This is just a collection of 4 sales that occurred in the last 2 years in the proximity to the subject property, which is the Vinson property. 3 of the 4 face directly north side or Fair Road, Highway 67. One is one property over, 2 of which were properties that were subject to the council's consideration of a rezone last year, in which I represented the neighborhood association. As you can tell, these are all zoned R15, which is single-family residence, which is a more restrictive zone, and they all sold an average of $172,000 to $228,000 per acre, and they all had comparable heated space to the Vinson property. So this property does have value, especially with its proximity to Georgia Southern, with the ability to erect up to, I think they said 8 or 10 duplexes. That is significant value. It may not be as much value as they would like, as they could get if it was commercial, but again, that's not the standard. The standard is whether the ordinance is so oppressive, you've essentially destroyed all value. And that is obviously not the case here. So I would ask that you follow the recommendation of the Planning and Zoning Commission and deny this request. Thank you.
I want to ask again, do we have anybody to speak for the project? Okay, who would like, Ms. Schreiber? Come up, introduce yourself. And please, let me remind, can we limit our comments to 3 minutes?
It'll be less. Hi, I'm Kathy Shriver, and I live at 106 Benson Drive in the Woodlawn subdivision. We met before, or some of you, when Parker's was trying to rezone the land across from Hanner Fieldhouse, and I was a spokesperson against that. Since then, Parker's found a very successful place to build on in an already zoned commercial property, and Enmark can do the same. We trust that all of you take as much pride in our area as we do, and will do the right thing and deny the rezoning of this Benson property to commercial retail now and in the future. We have very valid reasons for several of us presented to the Planning Commission last week against this rezoning request. They included increased traffic issues, commercial development surrounded by residential areas, and the resulting decrease of property values in the area due to a filling station and motel right on top of us. The most important point made, though, is that if this property is rezoned commercial, we have no control over how it will be used. If Enmark backs out or decides to sell the property down the line, heaven knows how the land might be used in the future. The opposing group presented elaborate drawings of their site and a 4-story motel. But once they own the land, they can do what they want with it. They said there would be a boutique motel with 90 to 100 rooms. Well, that's the size of the Springwood Suites down the street, and there's nothing boutique-y about that motel. Not only are we residents of Woodlawn against this rezoning, but our neighbors in Edgewood, Greenbrier, and Wynwood also signed petitions against this rezoning, and one of our other members will present those to you tonight. In Woodlawn alone, we have 64 families who care about their subdivision and quality of life and choose to be close to, but not isolated from, commercial areas. We like living in the city. Do not ruin that for us by allowing this rezoning request. Mr. Rushing, of course, has talked in favor of his client. That's what he's supposed to do. But the fancy drawings he has with him today are unrealistic, and basically to just get us all to buy into the rezoning. This property that we're talking about to be rezoned is surrounded on all sides by residential and should remain that way. The commercial property is in the Market District and out Highway 67 towards 16, and also from Arby's down on the right side of Fair Road going to town. If Attorney Steve Rushing or Mr. Doug Carroll from Enmark or Mr. Ralph Kitchens, the realtor, lived in Woodlawn, trust me, they would be up here fighting for the integrity of their neighborhood just as we are now. Once that gas station is built, that land becomes contaminated. These gentlemen would not want contaminated property near their homes, and we don't either. I conclude with 2 important statements. All of us are for progress and change, but not at Statesboro's aesthetic expense or because of greed. The Benson heirs have the right to sell this property as it is presently zoned. But remember, we who live here have the right to live in our homes with this residential zoning that we bought into. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm Ann Dewey. I live at 109 Benson Drive, and I have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 pages of petitions that were signed by people all in favor of protecting our neighborhood and being against the Enmark station. So I would like to present that to you right now.
Okay.
I'd like also add that we did not have a single person not sign this petition. Everybody was for protecting Woodlawn and the surrounding areas.
So let me ask you something, Sue. Every single resident.
Every single resident that we were able to contact, we did not have.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear.
Ms. Mayor, could we take the drawing down for this block?
Yeah, it really is. Or just
Well, hang on, whoa, Nellie. Just hang on 1 minute. Mr. Rushing, let me ask Mr. Rushing to do that. Mr. Is it belongs to them? Thank you. Renderings are not cheap. No, they're not. Would you like some bulletproof?
I'm Russ Dewey. I live on 109 Benson Drive, and my wife and I have lived in Statesboro for 35 years. And during that whole time, people have fretted about the entrances to Statesboro and the impression they would make. I was really impressed with the Planning Commission meeting. I've never seen anything like that before, and it struck me as small town democracy at its best, because a lot of citizens making very heartfelt statements, and it seemed like they were really being listened to. And I think the Planning Commission's conclusion deserves to be supported. And one reason is that in the long-term planning interest of Statesboro, having this transitional corridor be as neat as it is evolving to be is a tremendous plus. I'm sure it's due to diligence of past city councils and planning commissions, but right now, if you drive into Statesboro along 67, and this is likely to be a major route route for decades to come, especially if 67 is correlated someday. People will be coming into Statesboro along there. You have this nice, neat stepwise progression where you go from the bypass to the market district, to the hospital, to the big churches, and then green and residences. And just aesthetically, it's great. I think it's right up there with our revitalized downtown and the walking path along the railroad bed. It's big pluses for Statesboro. So I would just say, keep do right, think long term for the benefit of Statesboro. Keep that pleasing stepwise progression on the transition forward. And don't let it be violated by suddenly putting something commercial down where the greenery and the residences are.
Thank you, Mr. Booth. Mr. Booth,
I'm the second of 106 Benson Drive, George Shriver. I've taught religious studies and history for some 41 years. I'm well acquainted with legalese, with misleading statements and absolute errors. I commend Inmark for their 2 locations and commercial sections of our city. They fit nicely in those 2 locations. What puzzles me greatly is the thus far unanswered question. Namely, why have you chosen this residentially located section of God's good earth when there are dozens of other location possibilities that are all already commercial? Sensitive forethought should have told you that this request would be severely and correctly opposed by our beautiful neighborhoods. As well, it is really unacceptable directly across the street from our beautiful First Presbyterian Church to be selling beer and wine 24/6 with also the danger of drunken brawls. Within less than 1 mile from this location are 4 other gas stations and stores serving our city. Your request is actually senseless, and legal defense for such is only materialistic and self-serving. On the state and national levels, there have been numerous successful oppositions to such insensitivity to beauty and true humanness. Please show some humanness and a genuine interest in serving the city and find one of the many already designated commercial sites all over and around our beautiful city. I thank you.
do I have somebody else that would like, I assume, to speak against? I would ask to speak for, but I'm not getting any takers. Okay, well, here comes Mr. Thorpe. Go ahead, Bill.
Good afternoon. I'm Bill Smith, and I represent First Presbyterian Church of Statesboro, Georgia. We'd like to come and request that this rezone be denied. And we feel that we've had our property for 50 years where we're located, and so we've had a very strong church and wanted to continue that way. We have a very large area for our young people and others to play and to worship, and we just feel that this would bring a lot of extra traffic. We currently have a real problem at times, especially when young folks are there with cut-through traffic trying to avoid the red light there. We know that something like this would only increase that. You have Georgia Avenue that comes around that already has a traffic problem many times right behind us, and we feel that this would increase the traffic drastically in that area, and that would be a detriment to everyone there. So we, on behalf of our church and some of the other 2 churches right in the immediate area, we would ask you to deny this request because it would bring in much more traffic. It would also put alcohol sales right next door to us there. This is what I understand, gas is the first item in a convenience store like this, and alcohol is the second one. So we would request that you deny that request.
move to the side. I've already spoken to the Planning Commission, so I won't repeat because several of you have already heard what I had to say, but I do have some additional information. There are current...
Name and address.
Sorry about that. I'm Verdred Kennedy. I live at 103 Dumbarton Drive in Woodlawn subdivision. There are currently 71 opportunities to turn onto or off of Fair Road between the bypass and Zetterau Road. Turning onto Fair Road is already both frustrating and dangerous. At certain times of the day, it is an absolute nightmare. I have sat at the exit to my subdivision for 10 minutes waiting to turn right, not left, but right, into the flow of traffic. Certainly a commercial property directly across from that, we could just open up a new street, I suppose. The number of traffic accidents on Fair Roads between Arby's and Highway 67 bypass intersection during the previous 12 months, 37. Each of these involved traffic backups with at least 2 police cars and 1 EMS and sometimes more. So the additional traffic congestion at this point would be unacceptable. Thinking of, and right now I'm just pretty much reacting to other things that I've heard, thinking of these lovely pictures which are so attractive, but from my understanding of what Enmark's representative said last week at the Planning Commission, they really do not know who is going to build that motel on that property. So they have absolutely no control over what it's going to look like. It may bear no resemblance to the pictures which are so attractive. One more thing, the ill will generated by the presence of this gas station in the middle of what is currently the oldest, one of the oldest and most attractive residential areas of the city, and plunked right down next to our beautiful garden and right in the midst of Georgia Southern University on that side of it. I would think that the ill will generated toward their business would be detrimental to their business, and certainly I would not want to put a business in an area where I was most definitely not wanted. So I asked the council to uphold the existing property and remain true to the trust that the people of Statesboro have placed in you. Thank you.
Do I have anyone else who would like to speak at this time? Yes, ma'am. Name, rank, and serial.
I'm Barbara Price, and I'm a member of the First Presbyterian Church. I was not able to be at the Planning and Zoning Board, but I have been a member of such a Planning and Zoning Board in the past in South Carolina. And I'm very appreciative of the fact that when you make decisions, and this is with you now, you are setting precedents and footprints in the sand of time. I really thought this was not an issue a few years ago when you denied parkers. But now it's before you again, and I think you have to remember that you're setting a precedent. This is a residential area. I was pretty displeased, I think, when Steve purposely, or maybe inadvertently, left off the church as a surrounding area. But that whole area, that whole strip of 67 is truly residential and churches until you get to the Market District and to Arby's. And I ask you to keep it that way. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm Jack Warren. I live on Gentile Road, and since 1969 we have fought Highway 67 in its zoning areas. In that fight, we have lost, and I really don't like naming businesses, especially one that I patronize, but Zaxby's needs a turn lane to get into it and not blocking 67 traffic. I don't know what can happen with this property. I do know what's already happened down there. It's going to continue unless y'all take a stand to stop this type of aggression. I appreciate you doing that.
Do we have anyone else who would like to speak?
Hi, my name is Carolyn Alvin, and I live at 103 Greenbrier Trail, which I own. I've lived there for almost a decade. I've raised my son, Colby Parker, the tuba player there, as my neighbors can attest from the practicing. And I'm speaking to you today really as a resident and a mother. When my late husband and I were deciding whether to live in Oregon or Statesboro, we made long lists of pros and cons, and Statesboro won out. Many businesses and families go through that same process, and it's critical to the future of our town to consider what we're building, because what we build is who we will become. I believe in private property rights. I also believe we need to take into account the impact a single action will have on the economic future of hundreds of others who live close to this property, the thousands of city residents today, and everyone to come in the future. Land is finite. When it's built, as the unsuccessful developments in our town demonstrate. It's hard to reclaim it once they're built. Our job is to build and develop in a way that fosters greater gain for the entire community. Our predecessors knew this. They worked hard to bring Georgia Southern here, and that has attracted talented people, their families, and lots of students that were training for high-wage jobs. Hopefully those folks want to stay here in this community and help us build a great place in Georgia. We want to attract businesses, and we're doing a great job putting all these things together as what attracts businesses. They want skilled employees, and those employees want great places to raise their families. Study after study has shown that people want to live in human-scale places with educational opportunity, green space, and culture, and that they're willing to pay for those things. You may have heard in the media recently that Georgia is one of the top places in the nation to do business. Even more recently, though, the media has reported on us as one of the worst places to live because Georgians no longer have access to education, and they're being swamped by traffic. As if you visited Atlanta lately, you know. Well, Statesboro can be different. We can be educational, healthy, interesting, and a wonderful and dynamic place for businesses, their employees, and ourselves. But it won't happen if we become a sea of gas stations or strip mall USA. Each of these rezonings will make us poorer, and this neighborhood inhospitable to the families it would do us good to attract. We've all stood on Fair Road in this area, and it's very clear that there is no commercial use between the Presbyterian Church and the Arby's. It's all residential and green, and a wonderful welcome to the city of Statesboro. I often walk to work down through that beautiful green corridor. Current traffic and road design makes it virtually impossible to cross Fair Road, whether by foot, bike, or car. There are often bunches of us on the side of the road trying to wait for the break in the traffic so we can make the death-defying run to the other side. I think that's a real tragedy for the city of Statesboro because it keeps a huge population isolated from the city itself. And that's a shame, and I hope will be addressed sometime in the future. But I don't want to make it worse, and I don't want anybody to get killed by this project. An increase in vehicular traffic brought on by a big hotel or a gas station will make this area more dangerous, particularly if you're a child. I'm not a worrier, but I know I worried every day about my son crossing Fair Road to get to classes at Georgia Southern. My neighbors and I have to contend with this danger every day, and it's horrifying to think that it could be even worse. One might suggest that design could solve these problems, but more traffic is more traffic, and an increased chance of accidents, which, as has been pointed out, happen all the time there, and more air and water pollution These are things residents will have to deal with and pay for. And we have dealt with them, not a half a mile up the road in an area designated as commercial. Why not concentrate restaurants, hotels, and services there and create a dynamic, attractive district rather than ruining a neighborhood? Speaking as a resident, I'm also concerned the rezoning will degrade one of Statesboro's best achievements. The garden was the first place I went as a newcomer to learn about this region and to enjoy a little peace and quiet in the midst of the traffic and fast food restaurants. It's part of why we bought a house in this neighborhood, Greenbrier. I'm concerned that increased noise, air pollution, trash, and activity will degrade the experience for visitors like me. The garden is visited by folks from all over the world and could bring in many more tourists with money to spend, but not if Statesboro has the reputation of being an ugly strip of gas stations. We want visitors to be delighted, not appalled by the quality of our community and the grace of our welcome as they enter from Highway 67. And with all due respect, the drawings are very nice, but I don't think that they're beautiful or imaginative. The gas station looks like a gas station. There are many places in the world where there are wonderful designs of gas stations and mixed-use developments. And I think that those things are possible in Statesboro. In fact, we actually have a good example of it on West Main, where we have housing above and wonderful storefronts down below. This property may be developed in the future, but I think it can be developed in beautiful, imaginative ways that add to the grace of our community rather than just give us more of unfortunate things that we already have. This rezoning prevents any imaginative, constructive use of the property forever and turns it into just another congested, polluting, and economically degraded strip of lost opportunity. As a neighbor of the property, I urge you to vote no on the rezoning, and I hope we can all work together to create something special for this area we can all be glad for. Thank you.
May I speak?
Yes, sir. Hold on, Mr. Wilson, then Mr. Hatcher. Excuse me, Mayor Hatcher.
Good evening, I'm Charles Wilson, I'm a resident of 107 Woodlawn Drive, citizen of Statesboro. I'm here because I care. Like I said, I'm a resident, recently moved to Statesboro 4 months ago. Moved here for the reasons of the quality of life that we all want for this community. I don't begrudge private property rights, I don't begrudge the spirit of enterprise, I actually appreciate it. The question is, we always have to ask is, at what value and to whose cost? In this case, I think it's pretty obvious the value is what it cost me, both hard and soft. When I saw talk about that, talk about quality of life. There's been a little bit of effort going on in this community to work together, to find a new future, planning, making bigger and better decisions. But I think the value in this defines itself. I don't want to make accusations, but like I said before when I spoke to zoning, you know, this is either a bad business plan or we're going to lose control. And there's going to be carnage littered across this community, whether somewhere else or right across the street. Or it's a great plan that's going to bring a lot of problems that aren't being defined and realized here. We'll show up later, which we can't do anything about. You know, when you look up the definition of community, which none of us have to do, we all know what it is. Sitting here watching it here, right here in this room, in the latter part of this discussion at least. And you know, I ask you, you know, don't kill another one of the geese that laid the golden egg for Statesboro. Don't put another well on the future of this community and seal it off. I'm just asking you tonight, think about this community, the value of this community, what we all stand for, and ask you to vote against this and turn it down now and for the future. Thank you.
I'm Bill Hatcher. I'm a resident for Woodlawn Terrace at 104 Dunbar Drive. There have been many reasons, I believe, to vote no given already tonight. I would just like to raise one more. Our homes, for each one of us, are our castles.
my home is my castle. I shudder to think what life or how it would affect my home if I lived where William and Patty Powell live, or Ms. Masters, those folks who live right on very near 67. If this establishment were to go there, and to think of the noise in particular, and the light perhaps, from 5 a.m. in the morning until midnight, when those residents are a stone's throw away from this establishment. I would urge you to think of that if that's your home, and I would urge you to vote no to this proposal. Thank you.
My name is Jimmy Hodges, and I'm a 40-plus year resident of Dunbar Drive in Woodlawn Terrace. I come really to talk about the relationship with Woodlawn and the Benson property. And I think in the minds of most of us as residents of Woodlawn, we've always considered them all one and the same. I mean, that was really a part of us, and we've been good neighbors to each other from the time the Woodlawn was developed by the Benson family and the Abert family. There's been a good feeling there, and we've worked together on many issues. In the early 80s, prior to that, Mr. Bland, who donated the land to the gardens, had reserved one lot that he sold to a friend to build a residence on. It was the property adjacent, right on 67 in Martha's Lane, adjacent to the Benson property that we're talking about. Well, the neighbor decided later to change his mind and was going to sell it for commercial development. That was prior to the current zoning laws. Well, it was a major concern to Woodlawn and to the Bensons, more so than that. The Woodlawn neighbors raised $100,000 and bought that piece of property and gave it to the foundation. Well, it benefited all of us, and it certainly benefited the Benson family. But we worked together on that, and it worked for the betterment of our area. And I think as the Bensons address future uses of that property, there are other things that can be done. But it's important that we preserve the integrity of all of it. As I say, it's kind of one and the same things.
Yes, ma'am, please come forward.
Strickland, and I live in Somerset Townhouses.
Yes, ma'am.
And as you know, Walmart's built there already. The filling station is there. Terrible traffic jams already. We sit forever, even so we have a light now. We sit there and wait and wait. And what is happening, people turning left, they cut you off right away because they're tired of waiting to make a left turn. So then it's very dangerous. But I have lived here in Statesboro since 1956, and I've seen the city grow, and when we moved here, we loved it, and I still do. But the traffic on 67 is really bad, especially when the classes are out of Georgia Southern. I live in the area, we have a lot of students, they're very nice young people, majority, and but the traffic is the problem. So if we had another business to come up, like filling station and all that, it would really be better. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Goodwin. Do I have anyone else who would like to speak? Okay, I'd like to say that based on the applicant in this particular issue providing notice to the city that certain constitutional issues are in play here, I would like to continue this hearing and take the evidence and argument presented under advisement so the facts and law on this can be reviewed. I expect that the Mayor and Council shall adopt written findings on this matter at its second meeting in February. Therefore, I make a motion at this time to continue the hearing until the second meeting in February. Do I have a motion from council to do so?
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second? Do I have any discussion?
Yes, ma'am, I guess the only discussion, this is very similar to the procedure that we did on a previous hearing. Is that correct, Alvin, or the mayor? Who would like to
That is
address
correct, but I'll defer to Mr. Lee Park to respond to that.
That's correct, and the idea is to bring back to the council adopt the written findings, facts, and reasons for the decision, so if there's any sort of challenge made to the decision, and the court reviewing the council's decision, clear understanding of why council decided this.
Can you, Mr. Lee Park, I hate to ask you to repeat that, but there are folks in Nevada that did not hear, so if you could please do that.
Is that better?
Yes, sir.
The idea is that the council will adopt written findings of fact so that the reasons that the council made its decisions would be clear to any court that may review any sort of potential challenge made here today. The idea is to bring those written findings back for adoption by the mayor and council in February. That's the idea.
Any further discussion?
Just, I guess, just to be very open to this current environment that we're in, the findings of fact or the findings will come forward. I guess the question is going to be, how do we, Mayor, so the community knows, how do we give our opinions or our thoughts about that? A document is presented back to us in the next council meeting for us to agree with or disagree with?
That's correct. You would vote on the proposed resolution to approve it, and if you approve the resolution as written, those would be the findings of the body, of the mayor and council.
And this is following the same procedure as we did with Parker's across from Manor.
That's correct. We did the same procedure there.
So do we vote to approve or deny the request and then findings next month, or do we?
No, you don't want to vote now, because then that would trigger the timeframe, which they have to appeal your decision, and you want the decision, whatever that may be. That right to be triggered at the time the written findings are adopted.
The motion that's on the table right now, that's been seconded, that's under discussion, is to actually continue this proceeding until the second meeting in February.
And just to reiterate, the open meeting that we just had with questions and answers from all the audience, we won't do that next time, since we're doing it this time. Am I correct?
Could continue, as I said, the hearings continued, but a lot of evidence has been presented today. So,
okay, so if someone has something else to say, still.
Someone wants to come back, they certainly can.
It would be a continuance of that public hearing, that is correct. Any further discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing has been continued. Second meeting in February. If y'all don't mind, can you please quietly exit so that we can continue with the council meeting in respect of other people's time? Thank you.
Mayor, can we just take a couple minutes?
I'm serious. I know you got one. You're a good daddy. You got one.
Oh, I wouldn't worry about it.
I went down there, usually I work with people every day, and I looked up there last night and spelling is never my strong suit. Westerns and I are very good friends. That's lovely. That's lovely. You do? You have to take them to her. Some on of them. You'll look really good when you're on you if you're not.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we could come to order for the community council meeting.
Hey, John, it's John. I know. You know what?
get started, we got a number of items left.
Oh, yeah, we got an hour.
All right, can I ask everybody? Ready? We're going to continue our meeting. We do have another item, even though the public hearing, just a little bit of explanation here. Even though the public hearing was continued on resolution 2015-05, I've been informed by our attorney, Alvin Leapart, that we need to hold a public hearing on application of rezone 14-10-01 because Mr. Rushing would like to put his request into evidence. So do I have a motion to open the public hearing to approve application V14-10-02?
Motion to open the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Okay.
Any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Mr. Rushing, can you come forward and put, speak to the consideration of motion to approve the variance, please.
That's right. Yes, thank you, Mayor, Councilman. I'll try to be much shorter with this. Obviously, if the rezone to commercial retail were to be granted for the Benson property, then yes, we would also seek a variance. But with respect to the hotel proposed for the property to allow for a fourth floor, we do assert that the application of the four factors will support that variance. First, there are special conditions pertaining to the land because of its size, shape, and physical characteristic not common to other land in the general vicinity. As best we can tell, there's in fact no other parcel of land exactly like this one. It's relatively small when you consider it is surrounded by roads all the way around. You normally think of a city block as having roads all the way around it, but this is just one parcel. So when meeting with city staff in our Right Start meeting, there was some discussion of the possibility of closing Martha's Lane, but it is something of a buffer and is still being used by the general public. So I think everyone liked the idea of turning the building, the hotel, towards the convenience store, making only its side view facing Fair Road so that it's not sprawling across the site. We also have to deal with the bend in Georgia Avenue, which will necessitate the giving of some additional right-of-way, thereby basically shifting everything a little bit northward towards Martha's Lane. The footprint then would be smaller with the additional floor. In other words, by using the depth of the lot and the additional height, the hotel can face the interior of the lot rather than facing Fair Road. Consider the Baymont Inn on South Main Street, which is also 4 stories. It extends deeper into the lot, and only its width faces South Main Street. Say opposed to the Hampton Inn on Brampton Avenue, which is also 4 stories, and sits across the lot and faces Brampton. And neither of those had to deal with roads on all sides and determining the right placement. This all makes better sense with a triangular shaped lot like this one, where both of those other hotels mentioned were on rectangular lots. Certainly the triangular shape of the lot and the roads on all sides do not result from the actions of the applicant, but does complicate the most effective placement of the hotel on the lot. Facing it inward, it loses some depth, resulting in the need to go up just an additional floor. Turning the hotel to face inward and thereby use the same road accesses as the convenience store saves on curb cuts and road accesses and makes it safer and more aesthetically pleasing, but certainly causes the footprint of the building necessarily to be smaller. To allow the additional height, you can regain the lost capacity and achieve the more efficient road access, still just using 2 accesses, 1 on each road, for both the convenience store and the hotel, rather than 4 being 1 for each on each road. It also allows for better visual aesthetics, particularly when viewing from Fair Road. If the variance is granted, the city staff has determined, and we concur, that there shall not be caused substantial detriment to the public safety, as the Statesboro Fire Department can provide adequate life safety provisions for a 4-story building, as well as being safer for the general public with a shared driveway. Also, as stated in the staff report, multiple variances have been granted for 4-story buildings, not just for the 2 hotels we mentioned, but for some other apartment buildings built within the city as well. As we stated, with respect to our rezone application, you can place your confidence in the city staff and the departments to make this work and to make it work well, just as they have with the other 4-story buildings in town for which variances have been granted. The granting of the variance is just the start of the process. The permitting process and inspection will see that development will meet the needs of the property owner while at the same time addressing the safety concerns and the public good in general. Once again, we are not asking for something that has not already been granted for various places in the city on even bigger lots and more regularly shaped lots. For these reasons, on behalf of the Benson family, we would respectfully request the council to grant this height variance. Again, thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Rushing. Do I have anybody here that's here to speak against granting that variance? Let me ask you, Mandy, can you tell me real quickly, and I apologize for not recognizing you sooner, what was the planning and zoning's determination regarding this request?
The planning commission recommended denial of the height variance 7-0.
Okay. Do I have anybody else to speak for? Okay, in that case, based on the applicant providing notice to the city that certain constitutional issues are in play, I would like to continue this hearing, this zoning hearing, and take the evidence and argument presented under advisement so the facts and law on this can be reviewed. I expect that the mayor and council shall adopt written findings on this matter at its second meeting in February. Do I have a motion to continue the hearing until the second meeting in February?
So moved.
Second.
Do I have any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The hearing has been continued.
We can have just a couple minutes to kind of gather our.
Absolutely. I know.
Council's way.
Yes, sir. That's just fine. Zipping right along. Zipping right along. Hey, can I go with you? Can we have the light back on over there? Because I feel like y'all are in a movie theater. Misbehaving on the back row back there. Yes, yeah, it's a little better. See. That was just wrong with it. I take it the air conditioning got fixed. Okay. Shall we go? Oh, right there. Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7, public hearing and consideration of a motion to approve application RZ 141105. I'd like to ask council to make a motion to open the public hearing to approve this, consider this application. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All opposed? Public hearing is open. Mandy, if you could please introduce this item.
Yes, ma'am. This is for the property located at 400 Knight Drive. It is commonly known as the Eagle Walk Apartments. This property was constructed in 1983 or thereabouts. It's a 26-unit apartment complex located on 2 acres at Knight Drive. The application is to rezone from high-density residential to commercial retail. We did perform an analysis of this application under our comprehensive plan and through our development team, as well as with the applicant. This is, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of the rezone pursuant to staff conditions. Those conditions, which I'll be happy to go over in detail if you like, are in your packet. Those conditions are aimed at getting some neighborhood scale and scope in the rezone. If you should rezone it to commercial retail, it would allow for some mixed use in the area at limited scale, very similar to what we did in front of the islands, if you all remember that particular retail rezone that we did just a short time ago. Planning Commission did join us in that recommendation, and the applicant is here, or his representative is here tonight, and they've also agreed to the conditions. With that, I'll be happy to go into any more detail or take any questions that you'd like for me to.
Could the applicant step forward? Hello, Mr. DiPolito.
My name is Sandy DiPolito. I'm a realtor with Prudential Kennedy Real Estate. And the individual that owns this property has owned it for a number of years and is probably close to some of the old storms or apartments in that area. Due to the growth of apartments, the units that have come on board in the last few years, and because of the age of these apartments and the maintenance and upkeep and redoing, he's going to have to make a decision to possibly tear them down and rebuild apartments or try to have an alternative use. And he feels that his alternative use would be commercial retail. And his plans would be, and then he's not going to do this today or tomorrow, but you know, as apartments deteriorate more, or as more apartments come on campus or around campus or newer developments, he would like to be able to have another use for that land. It's 2 acres and 26 units. His idea would be in the future to build a strip center, have multiple units, bays that could be turned into some type of commercial retail. He feels that the highest and best use for the future would be to change the zoning on that and allow him to do what he would plan on doing sometime in the future. It's the property around it, in front of it, and behind it is owned by Georgia Southern. It's my understanding from Mandy that they were notified of this request and had no objections or stated no objections. Right, Mandy?
I've received no comment on this particular application.
So no one from Georgia Southern spoke at the hearing?
No, ma'am.
Okay.
Given that, it's just something that the individual would like to do to possibly have a better and higher use for that 2 acres of land sometime in the future. We'd be glad to try to answer any of your questions.
So, go ahead,
I'm sorry, all the parking will be in the front?
No, it's, if you see the plan, well, I mean, he hasn't actually, what you see is where the apartments are, but there's a good bit of space for parking. And he has agreed to any of the stipulations that the zoning board and the planning office has put into place. But, you know, if he were to build something, he would have to comply with parking and height and whatever else that is entailed in construction of a new complex.
Yes.
It says there, Councilman Riggs, is no less, this is Planning Commission's recommendations, no less than 50%. 50% of parking spaces shall be to the rear side, so in other words, at least 50% have to be on the rear of the side.
Yes, ma'am. These were drafted, I drafted these in the Planning Commission and offered them as a part of the recommendation.
Okay.
Mr. DiPolito, I guess one of the questions I have is why change it now if he's not ready to actually do it?
Well,
we're game to do it.
As time goes on, I mean, he's not going to change it today or tomorrow.
Right.
But as time goes on and as the units become older and more costly to maintain, he's got, you know, he's going to bulldoze them down and build new ones, or keep repairing the old ones. In the future, if there is a chance to change it, I mean, to make another use, he would like to have it in place so that he could entertain the possibility of tenants, and be able to tell them that you could come here, and we're in the place, and so on. I don't see anything wrong with changing. I mean, you could not build apartments back if you changed them. And I can tell you this, Georgia Southern would be glad to see those apartments gone.
Yeah, I guess in listening to Councilman Brett, I guess the question would be if there's not a current demand for a change in it, just to rezone, is that where we are?
He wants to rezone so that he can have some uses in the future and be able to attract some people to take a hard look at it.
We did this before, and I mean, honestly, this is phenomenal. I think this could be really cool. Develop it, turn it into something else. It could look awesome. It could look awesome. It could look terrible. So my concern is, I'm not, and we'll get into this, I guess, in the discussion part. I'm just worried, because if y'all have been on council for a while, remember we rezoned something and then unrezoned it and then rezoned it again. Jim Lanier or Joe Lanier's property. And it's because they had an idea and they changed their mind and they changed it back, which was no big deal. And then Roy Thompson now owns it. I don't know if I'm concerned that Charles is a great guy, wants to do it, and then we don't have a plan yet. I mean, if he had somebody willing to buy it and Inmark came up and said we want to do it, because one thing on this Inmark thing that somebody brought up, the rendering, I'm game to improve it. But there's already been an issue with 2 or 3 developers that have said they're going to build something, and then they didn't build that. And you and I had this discussion regarding somebody one time before. That was not the property they were supposed to build, and we didn't put the stipulations on it, and it looks terrible from one of our icons in Statesboro. When you see it, it looks awful. And so we didn't do our job.
What are we talking about? I mean,
a property in town that we zone commercial, and we should have rethought it. But we didn't. I should have rethought it. I should have rethought it. But it does not look good. So I'm worried that this could be something that someone builds without some stipulations, because it is next to a several $1 million Zaxby's. It is next to Georgia Southern. It's an awesome piece of property. And he could build a really cool thing there and have great tenants. So my concern is, without a drawing, without what we're doing, what it's going to look like, and I know the conditions maybe protect us, but they still don't. I guess we can add conditions that could say the construction has to be X all the way around it, or the height. But I mean, I guess that's my 2 cents. I'd rather not just rezone it to take a rezone.
Would this have been better served as a PUD?
A PUD, pursuant to the definition of our ordinance, Mayor, is limited to 10 acres or greater in size. And that's always an issue that we run up against, is we don't have an allocate, so that ends up being a rezone and a variance. Another issue is that we don't have a zoning for a neighborhood center or neighborhood scale commercial. We have residential zonings, and then we have commercial zonings, and that's either our downtown or our big boxes or our highway commercials. And so the conditions that I gave you for thought tonight were really drawn from some model ordinances from the Department of Community Affairs and some other cities that I looked at from the zoning ordinances that have those smaller scale commercial areas. And I'm hearing more, I think I'm hearing anyway, more desire for us to move in that kind of direction. So that's what I think Councilman Britt's comments were going to, and that's what some of these conditions were aimed at achieving as a compromise. But that's only if you want to rezone the property. If you find those considerations in the ordinance merit a rezone.
Councilman Britt mentioned the gas station. I think we covered that in those 18 stipulations. You have to be a convenience store or gas station.
Oh, no, not even. I'm not worried about gas station. I'm just saying when we did some other things. No, I wasn't worried about that one. I think that is listed.
It is.
It's listed a couple of different ways on the.
It is.
Well, no, it says convenience stores are permissible.
The gasoline or fuel pump stations are prohibited, yes, ma'am. Again, same, we did restaurants are permissible, outdoor seating is permissible, but drive-throughs are not. Again, just trying to limit that scale so that you have good neighbors between the residential and the commercial in that area if this property were to be rezoned.
So it will be rezoned commercial and put right up to the dorm of Georgia Southern University, those dorms right there.
They're across the street.
They're across.
They have apartments behind it
Well, I mean, those are the apartments that are owned
by Georgia Southern.
by Georgia Southern, so they're considered dorms, even though they, you know.
Oh, campus work.
Yeah, they are considered dorms even though they are apartments that they bought, so. Yeah, I will be honest with you, I'm not opposed in any way, shape, or form to redevelopment of that property. I agree with you, Sam, it is horribly unattractive. I think we all know that. But I am concerned that there's not a plan in place to do it. I think this body would be more than willing to look at some mixed use or plan for the property, but just to rezone, given its proximity to Georgia Southern University, its dorms and everything, I'm not comfortable with that.
Well, his desire is to rezone it for future years. He does not have a site plan. He has no idea what kind of stores would be there or retail spaces or anything like that. We've got 2 acres. He probably build a 10,000 square foot building with, bays all the way down the doors and hope to rent it to retail type people that would be interested in marketing to the college crowd that's all the way around there. So I can't give you a plan. He has no plan. His request is to ask for the rezoning so that he can do something in the future. Now that might be a year from now. It could be 5 years from now,
Right.
or 10 years.
We'll stay on a hearing, I guess.
Yeah, do I have anybody who would like to speak for or against the project? Come forward. Anybody else? Okay, do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Motion to close the public hearing.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor, please state by saying aye.
All right.
Public hearing is closed. Now, do I have a consideration of a motion to approve application RZ 1411 sewer fund?
I have a motion to table it. It's my understanding if I were to make a motion to deny it and it happens to pass, then that does something to this property for a period of time. Is that correct?
Yes, if the rezone is denied, it cannot be reconsidered for 6 months.
So I'm not, no. And if it is tabled,
Table typically means to the end of the meeting.
Postpone.
the question is, how can we let it wither and die? If I so did not want to move forward with it, but I didn't want to hurt this guy for 6 months.
No motion is offered.
Hold a second. Motion.
There you go.
And it can come back in front of the governing body at any time.
You agree, man? They don't vote or take action.
May I say something? If you're not gonna approve it, why hang it out there indefinitely, come back from the governing body? What's gonna
Just
take?
so it doesn't harm him for the next 180 days to not come forward and ask for something to be done.
If no action is taken, sir, then he can come back in a month or two with a plan. If we deny it, then he can't come back in 6 months for any reason.
He doesn't have a plan. He doesn't have a tenant lined up. So, I mean, I would request that you either deny it or accept it. And if in 6 months, if he wants to try to get it up, coming in. However, in 6 months, it would probably be the same request, looking for something to the future. But he has a better opportunity to develop something else if he has his zoning in place and can present it to prospective people in that manner. I don't see anywhere that it's going to hurt the environment or that neighborhood, or it's going to hurt anything to grant the rezoning. It's apartments now. If it changes, it will not be apartments any longer. And if he does a plan and brings a situation to build something there, there's multiple layers of you folks we got to go through to ever get it accepted. The planning commission.
But this group's not one of them.
But no, I'm talking about the government agencies.
Right, we're not, and I think that's interesting, because we want to be involved in that decision. And once, if we move it, if we change the zoning to commercial, we're out.
What harm would this do? Why would you want to be involved with this? I mean, what's he going to do? He's not going to put something that's going to be intrusive or ugly, or it's going to deteriorate the property. I mean,
What guarantees do we have that that's the case?
Well, I mean, he's got to present a plan to the city before he can even build. He's got to get building permit. He's gotta go through engineering, he's gotta go through the water department, he's gotta go through multiple layers of bureaucracy before you ever put a mail on it, too much for it. My thing is that working as a realtor, if we pursue to get a client or clients or multiple people to look at that property and move forward and do something, it's much harder if the zoning's not in place. It's been agreed on by, I think, everybody here, that the apartments need to go away, they need to be destroyed, or bulldozed down. And, you know, I just think that you're putting this landowner at a disadvantage if he can't pursue what he would like to do with it for higher and better use in the future. If the zoning's in place, he has something to offer somebody. If it's not, then we have to go through this again. And, you know, there's no harm there'll be no harm bestowed on anybody if this is accepted and approved.
Are there any private property owners adjacent to this? Is it all Georgia Southern on all sides?
To the best of my recollection,
I'm
yes.
pretty sure it is. I mean, there's not, behind you, in front of you, and going back towards the main road, it's on Georgia Southern Park.
So Georgia Southern is the only neighbor for this particular property in Georgia Southern?
That I recall, yes, sir.
And they haven't objected?
No, sir.
And I can tell you this, Georgia Southern's contacted me in the past, asking me if I could
Please do something about it.
get him to do something about it.
You know, it's an eyesore now. And before anything can be built, no one's going to have to build.
I'll state, looking at the, all the recommendations from the standing board, I'm for voting for it tonight. Just my opinion.
Well, then do I have a
I'm
motion?
for voting for it tonight. That's a motion.
You wanna make a motion?
Sure.
approve it?
I make a motion to approve
Application RZ 1411-05.
05. I second. Motion carries.
Any discussion?
I guess the only discussion is you guys, if we vote for this, then you're changing the zoning on it, and it is now commercial, and there's no drawing whatsoever. We can be left with a building that meets minimum looks, that is a corridor into our campus. I know that Georgetown had the opportunity to be here, they're not. And if what's allowed in our ordinance is what Georgetown's okay with being there, I'd rather than look us in the face and go, yeah, you know what's located at X, Y, and Z address? We're okay with that. I have a hard time believing that that's correct. But I don't want to put words in her mouth. If he does not have a plan in place and says, look, we just had a presentation lasted 40 minutes. It was from a person spending their own money to ask us to rezone something for their own use. I would assume Dr. Benson spent very little money to do that. Inmark funded that campaign. If a developer wants this property, they will fund a campaign and convince this council that the product they want to put there is good. So I can only urge you that please think about Kmart parking lot. Think about Winn-Dixie parking lot. Think about some other areas that we have that are sitting vacant, that are being built, and they're not full, and what could we have done to aesthetically improve them, and that could go right. We have several others that are like that, and I worry that that's what we're left with. Like, I don't even know in the conditions, does it have to be brick all the way around, or on 3 sides?
We have some conditions that deal with plantings, streetscape. If a consistency of high quality architecture shall be used throughout the development.
Which could be what? I'm just thinking, what are you looking at from
Well,
your?
you know, it is kind of interesting that, what is the zoning that we changed to, is commercial?
Commercial retail, yes, ma'am.
So we just continue the hearing of commercial within the middle of residential, and now we're about to approve commercial within the middle of residential. Is that what I'm hearing?
The applications ask for rezones from residential districts to commercial districts. We are seeing that
It's surrounded by residential,
Well, it's surrounded by government technically.
government residential.
It's people sleeping there.
Yeah.
the kid open up a window and he's gonna see the back of something.
Well, they didn't have any problem building Eagle Village right behind the plaza.
And did you approve Zaxby's for the same situation? And they've got, residential.
That was already commercial.
That was commercial.
It was commercial.
There's already commercial?
Yes.
And actually, a proposal came to us for that property to put a gas station, and this group turned it down, correct? They decided that the Zaxby's was a better piece of property. Hey, I've lost some before, I'm losing it, guys, I'm just saying, we can take a breath on it.
Is there any way I can stipulate that, the owner, before they develop it, bring plans to us to, can't do that?
No.
No, because you'd have to rewrite the ordinance.
That's what I'm saying, I'm just saying, I'm for it, develop it, trust me, I think it looks awesome, I think he's got a multi-million-dollar piece of property that he will rent out for ridiculous rent, and it'll be awesome for him, but I haven't seen it. And he could also go in there and build 10,000 square feet, which would run him $250,000, metal building, and be done with it, and half of it will be vacant for 5 years. And if that's not true, look around town, we've got it.
I think you're being prejudiced towards this individual. And I know-
Charles? I love Charles.
I know you do, you love everybody. But here's the thing, you're asking to postpone planning and an economic situation that could move forward because you want to see a plan.
I'm
We've
asking
got
for
to
it
go
to be the
through-
same
we've got to
thing
go
as we
through
treated Dr.
administrative
Benson
bureaucracies
just a moment
to get, and Nancy is covered, architectural. I mean, we got.
She just admitted she's not.
It's in there, isn't it?
It says architectural,
Well, you gotta approve, the city has to approve the plan.
but not what it looks like, not the aesthetics of it, and not what that kid that's paying $700 a month looks out of his window and sees. Randy, am I wrong?
I can understand what kid will look out when they see what he is.
Every kid lives in that door.
That's fine, but I don't think they're gonna do all that. I mean, you could be speculating, you could be putting the cart ahead of the horse. That's
Right.
what you think it may happen, but it may not happen. Let's look at it that way.
But
I don't think we should sit here and compare this project with the project that we just got through, because you saw the people here tonight was against that.
Yep.
You don't see anybody here tonight against this.
They were against a specific drawing.
I
We didn't
understand
get
that.
it.
And we can't give it to you. I mean, if I could, I would. The man wants to be able to use his property in the future for its best economic use. That may be doing a strip center, and when it will be, I can't tell you. It will stay apart until that time comes, and if that time comes. But anyhow, you, let me know. Tell me what you're gonna do.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to, do I have a motion? We have a motion, we have more discussion.
We're in this.
Does the motion include the recommendations?
I'm sorry, yes, mine did include the recommendations by, Stanley
And planning commission? Okay. So we have a second of the motion to rezone, including the conditions placed by staff and planning. All right, to be clear, any further discussion?
Well, I guess part of what we're sitting here doing is figuring out exactly how council's gonna affect development, and I'm not sure the ordinances allow us to do as much nitpicking as we wanna do. Is that right?
I agree with your statement.
And so, I can understand your concern, Will, is that if we allow it, we have fairly loosey-goosey building standards and development standards to a certain degree. We certainly don't have, higher standards, and that's a concern, but I also see his situation. You want to be able to have a piece of property and go out and say, hey, we've already got this zone commercial, let's do something, so. That helps anybody decide anything.
May I restate that a little bit and ask for some clarity?
Sure.
I think there's a difference between zoning regulations and design regulations and design standards. And what I think the applicant is asking for is zoning, and what I'm hearing council ask for is design. And what we don't have on the books are design ordinances. So Councilman Britt is correct in that if you rezone it, what we will check for at the permitting stage is conformance with the zoning and the other development regulations, but those regulations do not include design standards. If this council is desirous of design standards to be placed on commercial properties, then that's an avenue that we need to explore further. because I can't check for that in the permitting, because we don't have those.
And I don't think Alan would like for us to add a condition to it that says a drawing or a rendering approved by council or building materials approved by council or any of that. Alan would lose his mind. Or lose his mind for it. You already called him one. So I don't think we need to add those things to a recommendation.
Any further discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed,
Nay.
the rezone is granted.
Thank you, folks.
See you soon. All right, agenda item 8. Consideration of public hearing and consideration of a motion to approve application RZ 14-12-01. Do I have a motion to open the public hearing regarding application RZ 14-1201? Second, any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Public hearing is now open. Mandy, could you introduce this item, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is a 0.31 acre tract located at South College Street. The applicant here is Mr. Ray Henley. This is adjacent to a property that Mr. Henley is currently redeveloping and is behind the property that we know as Village at Midtown. The rezone the request is to rezone from R20, which is single family residential, to R3, which is medium density multifamily residential, in order to allow a single duplex to be constructed on the property so that that duplex can be connected to the property adjacent that's currently under redevelopment, and it would be similar in fashion to the Village at Midtown that it backs up to. The R3 is the only designation that we have in zoning that would allow duplex, and the lot size being just under a third of an acre would only allow one rooftop. So don't lose sight of the scale that is being asked for here. This parcel is right on, it is one parcel outside of the SDA district, and it's also one parcel outside of our newly adopted TAD district. So we did look at both of those plans in drawing on the analysis for this, as well as the comprehensive plan, which places this in the urban core. All of those plans encourage redevelopment, and all of those plans encourage higher density redevelopments for residential. So for that reason, the staff has recommended the rezone, and the Planning Commission joined us in that recommendation to you all 7-0.
Okay, do I have anybody here to speak in favor of this motion to rezone?
My name is Brian Davis. I'm the current property manager for Henley Properties. I think I have the easiest case for y'all tonight. This is pretty cut and dry. We currently are renovating the old Emma Kelly house, or Bill Kelly property next door that has 8 apartments in it. And we have this vacant parcel next door, so really we're just trying to bring across the street exactly what Mandy said. It'll be a brick duplex, same color brick, same color rooftop and everything like that, just to kind of tie those 3 projects together. So it will be 2 one-bedroom apartments. There will be parking behind it that will be used for the adjacent building, and some parking like a driveway that's in front of it, kind of a horseshoe shape that's in front of it as well. But it's very similar to other projects that we have done downtown. This will put us right around 65 new dwellings that will be downtown in the past 3 years. So trying to move towards that direction and bringing more professionals. Right now, everything is 100% full, and we actually only have 10 spots left for next year as of August for these units downtown, because there's a lot of desire for people to come that way if we have the housing for them. So we hope that we can count your support to approve it, so we can bring 2 more units down there for some professionals to come down to. Any of you have any questions about the project or the building?
I never thought that would look as good as it does.
It's beautiful, Annie.
Holy Toledo.
Let's come take a tour.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Do you have anybody else who would like to speak for or against this project? Okay. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing regarding application RZ 14-1201? Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do I have a motion to approve application RZ 14-1201?
Move to approve.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 9 has been postponed at the request of the applicant, so there you go. Agenda item 10, do I have a motion to open a public hearing to discuss application number B141101?
Motion open.
Open the public hearing. Agenda, okay, do I have a second?
Motion
Come on, somebody say.
Second.
Public hearing. All right, any discussion? All in favor, please say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Mandy, could you introduce this item, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is a variance request for property located at 126 Rushing Lane. This is a sign variance. I do want to make the council aware of the fact that Article 15 of the zoning ordinance clearly states that no variances shall issue from the sign ordinance. That being stated, we do have some due process concerns about not bringing these applications forward for you, and it is part of the zoning ordinance, so we bring those forward to you with your attention to that. This particular location is right at a corner of Rushing Lane, and this is the hotel property that has frontage on Veterans Memorial Parkway. This is governed by Sign District 3 of the ordinance, which limits signage on the parkway to 8 feet in height and monument in style. This application is asking for a freestanding pole sign at 15 feet in height. We did look at this under the regulations and for the variance standards under 1801 in the ordinance. The application is asking this because of the change in elevation and topography off of the bypass onto the property. We've given you some pictures of that in your staff report. There are also a number of other signs in the area that are this height and taller that were either issued variances for similar reasons or were governed under previous sign regulations that allowed for freestanding signage of this style and this height that is being requested herein. Because of that, and also because of the fact that the applicant is staying well under the aggregate that is allowed to them pursuant to the ordinance, particularly for double frontage lots, and is steering clear of the visual clutter that the ordinance tries to eliminate, we have recommended approval of the application, and the Planning Commission joined us in that at 7-0.
Do you have anybody here to speak in favor? Anybody here to speak as opposed? Okay, do I have a motion to close public hearing?
So moved.
Sure you want to say something, Andy? No, you good?
No? Okay. Excuse me, do I have a second?
Second.
Do you have any discussion? All in favor, please say by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is closed. Do I have a motion to approve application B14-1101?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Andy, you said this sign is not out of character with other existing signs in the neighborhood?
That's correct.
In the area?
In the area. Yes,
And not to mention the fact that this property sits below Veterans Memorial Parkway?
That's right. That's actually the reason that we recommended the variance here is that's considered a typical reason, textbook reason for variance is when you have something in your topography that would make application of the ordinance on that site different than the application of the ordinance on a different site that doesn't have that topographical feature.
I mean, essentially, we're looking at an 8-foot or 9-foot sign if you were to level out.
Correct.
That's about the situation.
That's correct.
That's it?
Okay. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Agenda item 11, public hearing and consideration of a motion to approve application B1411-02. Do I have a motion to open up the public hearing?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is open. Can you please introduce that item, Mandy?
Yes, ma'am. This is also a sign variance, so I'll remind you of the issues in the ordinance there. And these are for properties located at 1201, 1202, and 1203 Brampton Avenue. These properties are part of a PUD, a zoning district. They are also subject to sign District 3, which again is the 8-foot tall monument style signs. But when you are in a PUD, the difference here is you are allowed one freestanding sign for the entire PUD, and I believe this one has 12 buildings in it. In 2008, this same request came before the council to allow for the 3 properties, 1201, 1202, and 1203, 3 of the buildings that front Brampton Avenue, of the 12 that are in the PUD, to have individual freestanding signage, monument in style. The council at that time granted that variance, so I don't mean to overstate this, but it took me a minute to get clear. Instead of not 12 individual signs, but not the one for the whole PUD of the 12, just these 3 that fronted Brampton were allowed to have one monument style sign each.
And the only one there now is Sea Island Bank.
That's correct. Sea Island Bank on Brampton is one of those that was granted that variance in 2008, and they exercised that variance. The other 2 properties did not exercise their variance, and under the ordinance, it expired 6 months later. We have recently received sign applications for one of these properties, which necessitated this variance application to come before you today. And even in this process, the 3rd property has come forward, and they would like to also place signage at that location. We have worked very closely with the Architectural Review Board for this particular area, as well as the applicants, and looked at the variance that was granted in 2008. And based on all of that, have recommended that the variance be again granted on the conditions that were recommended by the Architectural Review Board, which are that the 2 properties at 1202 and 1203 Brampton be limited to 1 sign each, monument in style, at 5 by 6 in size. Those signs are to line up with the sign at Sea Island Bank and be located within the landscaped median. The Planning Commission heard this. They also agreed with that recommendation at 7-0. And I do believe there's some representatives here tonight that may have something to add.
Motion to open public hearing?
Second.
We did that already, I'm sorry.
It's already open.
No, double stand.
Do we have somebody that would like to speak regarding this project?
I'm Will Self, Action Signs. I didn't put the variance in front of you, but I'm the second person with the application for Transform Health, and Dr. Gervis is going in there, that building. Mandy, correct me, I thought the variance was looking for 6, so let's be 6, what was the size again?
5 by 6.
That's right, 5 by 6. I would just.
The signs are gonna be identical to the Sea Island Bank, are they not?
They're very similar. They're not identical, but the one we proposed is a solid brick structure. There's no air between it. It goes all the way to the ground. A little bit of square top to it since it's so small. The signs are going to be like 2 by 5 or 10 square foot. They're really just identity markers, so people know that kind of turn it here. It's just going to help. What you've got further before getting in here was not under that PUD, so they're going to have larger signs. These are, keep the perspective, they're kind of small, but they do the point. They're very similar to the Sea Island sign as far as monument. Sea Island sign does have some air underneath it. I think the other one proposed also is a solid monument. They're both going to be brick, and they'll match back to the building. Ours is going to be brick painted to the building colors. It's very, very cut and dry as far as what we're looking for. I'll answer any questions that I can do it on the one we have, but I've seen the other drawings, so it's very cut and dry.
They've already got approval from the Architectural Review Committee from the Market District?
Yes. That's right, yes.
This is what you're proposed to do?
That's correct.
And
they're okay with it?
Yes, sir.
The other one, and mine is very similar. They're a little different design, and the wings come out the back. Mine is just straight up structure.
Okay.
But they're very similar to that. I think the Architectural Review Board, which that PUD has in place, will allow sandblasted signs. They're going to be a nice high-end look. There's not any lights on them. The one we're doing is not. They're very classy for the structure that, for just a turning marker, what they're looking for, again, to let people know where they're turning. Mine is a separate.
Yours isn't what we're talking about tonight.
That's right.
You're gonna have to bring yours back.
Okay.
So that.
Well, I thought it went with the PUD, though.
Does it go?
It goes in the PUD, is for those only.
So Will's doesn't have to come back.
It would not have to come back. It's included in this request. Both of the
Okay.
properties are
Okay, all right, I was a
included.
little
And they're-
confused about that.
The size of them are identical.
Okay.
That's the maximum size that they're asking for.
Okay.
Because, that's right, because the common property is all one.
That's right.
Okay.
It's not managed under the,
Okay.
I'll answer any questions if you have.
Anybody else want to speak about this? Come forward. In that case, can I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Do I have a consideration of a motion to approve application B 14-1102?
So moved.
Do I have a second? Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Agenda item 12, public hearing consideration of a motion to approve application B 14-1104. Do I have a motion to open up the public hearing to discuss this?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Public hearing is open. Mandy, can you introduce this item, please?
Yes, ma'am. This is for property located at 1342 Kiwanis Road. Again, this is a signed aggregate question, so I would remind you about the provisions of the ordinance there. The applicant here has asked for an increase in aggregate from 80 square feet to 200 square feet. And there are some changes that needed to be made in your staff report. So some things have happened here at the last minute I want to update you guys on. Originally, the ask was for up to 300 square feet in aggregate. This particular piece of property is for a church that is being constructed in a residential area and is zoned for residential. Under that, they fall under Sign District 1, which limits them to an aggregate of 80 square feet. When the application first came to us and they were asking for 300 square feet, we recommended against that and had some conversations with them because at 300 square feet and signage, that was greater than what we currently allow even for our commercial signage in commercial zones. After some further discussion, the applicant reduced their request down to 200 square feet in aggregate and want to concentrate that on wall signage or building signage on that particular structure that's being built as we speak, and then have some egress signage that's marked there, and then would reserve them a few extra square feet for some freestanding signage that could be added later if they so choose. We did recommend approval at the 200 square feet for a basic reason in that Sign District 1 is limited to residential zones, and it only contemplates residential use and a non-residential use in that particular sign district. It does not contemplate the size of the property, the acreage of the property, nor does it contemplate the size of the building that the signage is going on when it regulates and governs at 80 square feet in aggregate meaning all the way around the building and any freestanding signage that may be in place on the property. Our commercial districts do contemplate, in some places, at least the size of the building that the signage is going on. This piece of property, the original piece of property is almost 14 acres in size. The church has picked up an additional 14 acres that they are joining to that property. The church itself, the building is over 200 feet long, if I remember correctly. So given the scale of both the acreage and the building that the signage is asking for, and the fact that the signage would be limited to the parkway, to front the parkway, and would not be directed at any of the residential areas that surround this, then we were able to recommend the variance be awarded and capped at 200 square feet in aggregate and facing the parkway on the wall. And the Planning Commission entertained that, and they agreed with that recommendation 7-0.
Is there any limit on the freestanding sign out in front of the property? You say aggregate, they could they decide to say, I don't want to put one on the building and build a 200 square foot?
No, the aggregate by definition in the ordinance would be the square footage added on the ingress, egress, the freestanding, and the wall sign.
That's what I'm getting at. What if they just decide, I don't want to do wall, I don't want to do regular, I'm just going to put a 200 square foot sign right at our entrance?
No, we would be more careful in our judgment letter how we crafted that.
Well, I was just saying.
We'll be more careful than that.
What can you limit that to? What would you do in your judgment letter to limit the street signage?
Well, I think there's still some regulations that would govern that it would have to be monument style, and we do the 8 foot in height, which is typical for our ordinance. We could spell that out. You all should spell that out, and I would recommend you spell it out in your vote tonight, and we would reflect that in our judgment letter.
Are there any other churches in town that have signage of this size?
Not to my, not to come to mind.
I mean,
But
because
I
I would say
have,
Pittman Park is, if you look at the properties, probably of a similar size. The Catholic church is a big church. There's a big church right there. Not just down on the corner, was it Eastern Heights? And none of them have that kind of signage. Maybe so. But they're all three of those are also on much more highly trafficked roads as well.
Is this gonna be a backlit sign?
On the building, can we,
Sure, absolutely.
again, I'm Will, and this is Sean Fox. I'm Sean Fox. Representing from the church. I just want to, again, tell you guys, that the scale of this building is pretty good size. And 80 square foot on the wall sign, which you can see, we've got it up here now. That's 152 square foot wall sign. And we do want it lit, but it's going to be the reverse, it's a halo type lighting. It will light the back of the building up and not light out and flare out you like a commercial type sign. Now the one on the left, the logo that you really, the circle logo, would light from the inside out. And it's also got vinyl. The other would be a halo type, wording is halo lighting. It's what shines back to the building to light it up.
And it's that building sits fairly far back from
It's
the
a
road.
good ways off the road,
Yeah.
because of the projections and what they want the parking lot. The parking lot's gonna be pretty good size too. So it's a big building when you look at the scale. If this were a zone, and it's not, if it was zoned in a commercial, you end up, the way the rules read, you correct me if I'm wrong, you get 5% of your total square footage. And if that was the case, you'd be looking at 267 square foot of frontage in this building.
or 60 square feet.
Or 60 square.
Whichever's greater.
Whichever's greater. So the scale of the building is what's asking us to ask for. We don't have a problem if you look at these drawings going with what we just recommend on there, that we go by the drawings only, no changes. It has to come back for a big different variance.
I would say too, we're planning on a move-in date, like our first service being March 1. So this is the proposed drawing. We don't have any plans to do anything other than this to address your comments.
And the bulk of the signage is, as you can see, it is on the wall, because that's so far back. The building is far big ways off the road.
My son goes to Sally's, I'm very familiar with
You
the
know,
building.
and the roadside signs are pretty much the same. They're decent sized structure, but the signage on them is 19.94. It's just basically telling you this is where you need to come. And there would be two. They have two. One entrance that will go ahead and be done. The other entrance, once it gets in, gets to the development a little bit more on there, there's another entrance off another road, which the other turn in.
Well, the other entrance off the other road, is that gonna be railroad bed? Where's the other entrance? No, I'm trying to think of it. You're not gonna have two Kiwanis Road entrances?
No,
Where's the second entrance?
The second entrance that we're trying to work with the developer behind our piece of property, there is a cut through that's already present on Railroad Bed Road that we're trying to work with the developer behind us, who's I believe it's supposed to be some sort of residential complex back there to kind of share that egress on the backside, and we would want to place another monument sign back there.
So is it thought that another sign would actually go on railroad bed? Because I don't think that's gonna fly.
Okay.
I don't see that. Well, that would be right there at that neighborhood, right
Yes,
the
ma'am.
trail. You would have to come back on that one. That would not be included in this, I'm assuming.
That's, you all tell me.
Okay. Y'all see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that one, we could.
I can go over that.
Because that was,
It is projected.
yeah, that's, I
Well-
wanna make sure we're clear on that.
Well, again, when we pass an aggregate like this, they can pretty much put signs wherever they want, right?
No, well,
I mean, as long as it complies with the ordinance.
right, and you're limited to one roadside sign per road frontage, so you can't put multiple.
For road frontage.
Per road
How
frontage.
can the railroad bed road come under this? If they want to put a sign frontage on that?
Because they have frontage on Railroad Bed Road, so if we don't want to allow signage there, then we need to be clear in that.
And since they have 200 square feet, they get 150 feet on the building, they get 20 square feet per sign. put one on Kiwanis, one on Railroad Bed Road, that's still within 200 square feet.
How do y'all feel about putting one on the railroad there?
I have no idea what it's gonna look like here.
I mean, I'm not saying no, but as it develops and goes, I mean, that's where the trail is, y'all know that. I mean, that's our nature area. I have a little bit of an issue with a lit sign.
That
That's not gonna be lighted.
The one, this is
The
not.
monument is not lit.
I just,
I guess, Will, are you guys okay with, I mean, you worked with us forever. Are you okay with, let's do the two?
Sure.
And let's come back.
Absolutely.
And completely separate, let's talk about railroad, because if we look at railroad and do that one, then that means everybody else down railroad, no matter what it is.
Every apartment complex.
right, and on top of that, we are still working through trying to get into an agreement with the county on exactly, because it's a development district and the DCA looks at us as it regards Railroad Bed Road in that district, so,
We're totally, yeah, absolutely.
And we'll figure it out.
I feel bad, like I'm yelling at the church.
Don't feel that.
You know where that ends up.
I feel bad right now that I'm yelling at connections, I do. But I'd rather come back and look at that, like Councilman Rent says, then that would be my recommendation.
Throw your hat at it. Throw it.
That's totally fine, because, I mean, I'm not nearly as concerned about that, because that piece of property is.
Your neighbors are gonna know you're behind them. I don't think that's gonna be an issue.
It's bigger than the school, so.
I'm not bothered with that at all. We just trying to get something approved so that when we move in, we actually have something.
So then, does that change the aggregate, or the aggregate remains what it is, and it includes those two signs? And can we have the signs done to the scale that they're done in the drawing? Y'all would agree to that? Okay.
Yeah.
I would say traditionally, whatever Will has brought us is very similar to what's actually put. I would say that's pretty fairly consistent.
Yeah.
Okay.
I say that after.
So, do we have a motion to approve application B141104, stipulating that drawing is what is to be built with signage on the building and signage, one sign on Kiwanis Road?
I'll make a motion to approve contingent upon 180 square feet of aggregate signs, limited to one roadside sign on Kiwanis Road plus the building sign.
Sure.
Second.
Do we have any discussion? All in favor, please state by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, consideration of a motion to approve excuse me, well, never mind, we're done. Consideration of a motion to approve resolution 2015-04. A resolution extending a temporary moratorium on the acceptance, issuance, and processing of alcohol license applications for locations where previously licensed premises was adjudicated a public nuisance by a court of competent jurisdiction. I will ask Mr. Leapart to introduce this item, please.
We discussed this matter earlier, and I had a chance to speak with council this week. Put this on because that moratorium is set to expire the first week of February. We do have court orders in place. They may get us where we need to be, or to rely on the terms of the court order to, in effect, carry out the terms of this moratorium. The moratorium was more or less put in place to support and decisions of the Superior Court in their permanent injunctions that they made, and make clear to the staff the terms of those orders. So the moratorium has been in place a long time, probably longer than it was supposed to be in place. And it's really up to council as to what to do with it. I would say that any alcohol license application comes in for any of these two properties, have to be evaluated in light of the orders issued by the Superior Court as to whether they should be granted.
And two properties, Platinum and Brownhead, formerly known as.
We have a permanent injunction, a prime time, a permanent injunction was entered, and, excuse me, Platinum case, a permanent council so that we can.
So in the event someone were to apply for an alcohol license on either of those two properties, in light of the court order, it would come in front of this body?
No, not from the
Where would it go?
I think it would be make a legal decision, or it would be the council's decision, really. I guess I'd become a consultant. I mean, the opinion would be whether the order entered by the court, whether the application for the property violates the terms of the order issued by the Superior Court of Fulton County. And, how would that? Now, we just have to evaluate each alcohol license.
Who would evaluate it? That's what.
I would evaluate it. Give
Okay.
a legal opinion as to what you did with each application.
But at this point, it's up to Ms. Starling.
With
When the application comes in, I'm saying, what would the process be based on the current ordinance we have?
Well, I would say based on the court orders, the process, if an applicant came in for two properties and applied, I would evaluate the application and evaluate the terms of the order of the Superior Court and issue an opinion as to whether that application should be processed.
Okay.
I don't want to put the city in a position of undermining the terms of the court. We're a party to it.
Okay, so then what happens with the opinion once it's issued?
Well, I'm assuming a letter would be sent to the applicant stating the reasons if we're not going to process the application.
Okay.
We thought they wanted to go to the Superior Court and explain to the Superior Court why his order didn't apply to this application, why he wasn't against the court asking.
Okay.
So we put it back in.
So it's a function of not processing it, not approving or denying it.
That's right.
Okay, that's what I want to be clear on.
So essentially, the court order and our ordinances would be in conflict without this moratorium?
It's not really the ordinance, it's the moratorium makes clear to the staff what the order is, to make sure that the city doesn't process any application for those properties that would undermine the intent of the order. So the law, the moratorium also allows the city time to address the issues that are present in the alcohol ordinance, unless we simply haven't addressed the issues. Time we should use the moratorium for.
So Alvin, I guess to hear it clearly, currently our moratorium is simply a way for Sue, police, this board to realize that we've taken an opinion to support the Superior Court. But we actually, even if without the moratorium, we do not have the authority to violate the Superior Court's order. We can't supersede that.
I would not recommend the city grant alcohol licenses.
You could at your own peril.
Right. We could be in conflict with the Superior Court, but I guess I'm under.
Yes, it would put us in a very good line.
Even dimmer than we are.
That's correct.
Let me turn it up. So, to get to the bottom of what you're saying, what I'm hearing you say is if we do not approve a resolution extending that moratorium, we are still bound by the court order in the sense that we need to cooperate with it. And by cooperating with it, we would evaluate any application that came associated with those two properties and make a recommendation as to whether or not to process it. Okay. Any further questions by council?
I'm just asking, if this moratorium was lifted tonight, of the city, the moratorium on we put the moratorium, right?
It would just expire, wouldn't it?
it would expire. It would expire, but we still have to cooperate with the laws of the Superior Court, right? Am I right in saying that?
Yes, sir.
Without this moratorium?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if we said, I think court order reads, Hayward Field, you cannot never ever get a license there anymore. Something to that nature.
It's a bit.
Whoever is associated with you can never get a license there.
Or anyone you lease.
Anyone you lease building to.
Anyone you assign the property.
Anyway, anyone you assign, that's still being connected with Hayward Field. But now, the only way this can actually happen, if he sells this building like to somebody, just sells, if he wants $365,000 for it, then he's out of it completely.
A bona fide arm's length transaction, you
Right.
can't merely transfer it to an entity.
Right, not transfer it, he say, I sold this to the so-and-so, and he used the papers up, I cash money, then he ain't through with that building, right?
Sure.
But the next person that buys that building, and he have to have a clean background check, as long as he's not affiliated or associated with Hayward Wiggins or no any kind of way, a person can buy that building. And he would be able to, if he checks out, clear. That's the only way that can happen, I think. Am I right to say that?
It has to be a bona fide
Right.
transaction, arm's length, consideration paid, sale, all of these try to do all that.
Right. So if they have, of course, have a problem with it, then they can take it over to Superior Court or whatever court they want to. That's still free of having to go back to court in the morning, right?
Well, somebody actually buys it out, bona fide transaction, not as a transaction you've already done. They would be bound on it.
If it's a moratorium against tonight by council, we still got to abide by the court order. We're suing nobody else can't. Unless that person is, he bought the building and we don't know. Like I said, the moratorium been there for a while. I'm just saying a moratorium because maybe you don't even want the building anymore, but you can sell it or whoever you want to do, but I'm just saying this, that's all I would ask.
Yes, sir. And that moratorium expires when?
Early
Yeah.
February 6th.
February 6th or something like that, so. Do we have any further questions? Okay, do I have a